look, we were prepared to do a lot of different things, but without a pick and without any money to spend, our options were somewhat limited. So we did look at some different things, but ultimately decided to stay pat.
I know you guys are always aggressive, active. How close did you get to doing anything tonight?
You know, there was some things that came up in the last few days regarding the draft that we looked at, but it was a pretty quiet day today. Usually it's much more busy, but it was just one of those things where we didn't feel like we wanted to be too aggressive in our pursuit of anything, and not much came our way. So it was we're pretty good at making your guys' lives exciting, but we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it for you tonight. Is that it?
Bob, is there anything pending? I mean, is there anything that there were moves made or not made today based on stuff that you've got planned into the future?
No, we you always see this lag time in the NBA of draft picks being made and 30 minutes later they're traded, or deals being set up and then consummated in July. But no, as I sit here tonight, there's nothing in the hopper for us. Yeah, Lowell or Marcus?
Question one, can we get a Kevin Love update?
It's all over the media.
What
Next question.
is it? Was this draft tougher to get into because of the talent, and did that make you want to get into it more?
Yeah, I think a combination of those things. Harder to get in because people coveted their selections more than they normally do. And then I guess that goes along with the price to get in being higher, but it also increases your desire to get in if you see a draft that's laden with talent like this one was. But it's funny, as you see, I mean, some trades do occur, but most of the time, many things you discuss actually do not come to fruition. So I think that's the same for all the teams, really.
Bob, I was also going to ask about Kevin Love. Forgive me. Since nothing.
I can't do that.
You can't forgive me?
No, I can't. No, go ahead.
Does this mean that I would expect that you guys will not get him, never will get him, or are we in a, I don't have anything to say about that situation?
Well, I don't have anything to say right now. I would say that I obviously was asked that last week, and I don't think my answers are any different tonight than they were last week. So there's not much to add to what I commented on sitting over there 3 or 4 days ago. Yeah, I would say I said then things were unlikely to change, and I'll say the same thing now.
Bob, without being able to acquire a pick tonight, can you address what you're looking for in free agency? Andre came out today and said he might be helping recruit Channing Frye, a bunch of different options there.
Well, what we can do now, what we're able to do, and what we did a lot of this past week because we didn't have a pick diamond, was spend a lot of time exploring free agency and what we felt our needs were and how to address them. And I think that's what our focus should have been, not having a pick in the first or second round, not having any cash to spend. So we spent a long time, many late nights here over the last 3 or 4 days looking at free agency and developing a lot of different strategies as how to approach it when that bell rings at 9 o'clock, June 30th, 9 p.m. So I've been on the other side of the process, and it's very fluid, it's very fast, especially unrestricted free agents, they go quickly. So we spend a lot of time targeting our priorities, what we think they would cost, what we're able to spend. We have our mid-level exception, which we can go out 4 years with. We have our traded player exception, which we received in the Iguodala sign-in trade last year with Denver, which expires July 10th, and that's roughly $9.8 million. So we have to work quickly if we want to use anything there. That gives us the ability to take a player into our team without matching salary in a trade. It also allows us to look at sign-in trades. So in some ways, the possibilities we have are endless. It's just how do we attack them? How do we prioritize them? We also have the luxury tax we have to be cognizant of, not necessarily for 2014-15, maybe more towards 2015-16. So these are all the things we looked at over the last 3 or 4 days, which are going to happen. And we do feel that we're armed with some tools to improve the roster a little bit in free agency.
Is there some players out there that didn't get drafted you would like to look at, or do you mostly want some veteran guys?
In the draft tonight, players that weren't drafted, we're going to look at that. We told Coach Kerr we've won 14 in a row in the summer league, and he's coaching, so he's got a lot of heat on him, and we're going to watch closely what he does with the roster we give him. But that's what's happening right now. If you walk back in our draft room, Kirk's on the phone, Travis Schlenk's on the phone. A couple of other guys are calling right now as we speak, agents for players that were not drafted. And there's some we like. Some of them came through here and worked out right here where I'm sitting. And so we think we can grab somebody. We got Bazemore that way. So there's a chance you can find someone. It's hard to do. It's unlikely. It's low odds, but we're going to try to see if there's someone out there that might be able to help us.
Bob, without getting into the specific of the big deal that might be out there, but does this team need a big deal, you think, to become a championship caliber team, or are you fine without a big deal going into next season?
Well, Tim, I think that's, like I answered last week, it's a question for any organization. I think even the top upper echelon organizations, maybe San Antonio isn't asking that question, but everybody else is. How do you improve your roster? There's so many ways to do it, and I think one way to do it was tonight, and we didn't have a draft pick, so you'd obviously like to have that. That's one way to do it, and then you can look at free agency, you can look at trades. I do think the trade exception in itself gives us a pretty decent vehicle. It's almost like having $9.8 million in space, which we don't have, but that's a valuable thing to have, not necessarily to acquire players, but to field offers from teams that are looking to maybe move off contracts that might help us and aren't helping them. So there's a lot of different ways to look at what we need to do and how to attack it, and that's what we're focused on and fixated on every hour. Probably too much, but that's what we do.
What was the reaction in the war room on how the league honored Isaiah Austin?
That was cool. I thought it was nice because in what we do so much, you're just so focused on the business side of things and we don't watch the draft as fans. We watch them as, unfortunately, it is what we do. It's our job, so we take it very seriously. But to kind of have a break and take a deep breath, it was kind of like a timeout and remembering sometimes that things are more important than who was drafted 12th and who traded for who, and that there's a human being element to it. So I thought that was great. I mean, I tip my hat to the NBA for acknowledging Isaiah Austin, and I thought that was a good moment for the league.
Just one detail thing. Would you say that the traded player exception can be used at the same time with your mid-level, or just with your luxury tax situation, or are they kind of one or the other?
Yeah,
just with the money terms.
Well, if you look at what we have under the tax right now, you could say it's between 11 and 12 million. So there's ways to split up the mid-level and the traded player exception. You don't have to take a player in that makes the full 9.8 million. So I've been given a mandate that we're okay to go into the tax if it's for the right reasons. But with those two vehicles, it probably would, if we maxed them out and took a player into the traded player exception that was around the 9.8 and then also did a mid-level contract for 5.3, those two things combined, that aggregate number would push us into the tax. Doesn't mean you can't do it, as long as you don't go over the tax apron. I'm probably putting some people to sleep here, but Tim likes it. So that's the truth of that. So we have the ability to use both if the right players fit and we think they make us better. We'll do both. But I think the easiest thing to do is use the mid-level. The traded player exception requires a little bit more cooperation if it's a sign and trade or another team putting a player into that kind of vacuum.
Bob, would you say you are, because of what didn't happen today, have a stronger likelihood of keeping Klay Thompson into the season?
I think if you look at our roster now, we like it, Tim, and we think it's got the ability to do well like it has in the past. We think we've got a lot of high ceilings if you look at our roster. So clearly, I guess by evidence by the draft and not doing anything at the draft, which is one of those times where teams are the most active, by standing pat, I think it does show faith in the current construction of our roster. But that being said, free agency is around the corner, and that's another opportunity to look at ways to improve our team. So we're always examining every possible way to get better as a team.
Bob, how many conversations or how close did you guys get to doing anything outside of the members of the draft class?
Separate from the draft, you mean, in trade discussions? Well, it's hard to quantify because so many things that I discussed and the teams discuss involve players, involve draft picks. So a lot of times, especially around the draft, the reason you're having these conversations leading up to the draft and even the day of the draft and night of the draft is because a lot of the trades you're discussing are in conjunction with picks or future picks. So it's natural that you'd be discussing both. I think it's rare. Sometimes it happens during the draft. I think we saw tonight where the 11th pick got traded for 16 and 19, things like that. But you also saw, I believe, some players traded over the last 2 days that involved some picks. And like in July, there's obviously chances for players to be traded and picks attached to those. But most of the time over the last 3 or 4 days, because the draft is imminent, a lot of the discussion revolves around picks, future picks, lottery picks in this draft, second-round picks. Fortunately, we didn't have any of those, so the calls we got were not about picks. And we're without having as many picks in the future, although we have 15 and 16 firsts, we're trying to hang on to those, keep those, so we don't have as boring of a night as we had tonight.
Bob, you said earlier that a big deal is unlikely. Not the same as saying that negotiations have been cut off.
Right.
Would you say that you guys have exhausted all permutations of possibilities, possible trades going back and forth, or are there still places to explore in terms of making something happen?
Well, Monty, I think you're always exploring everything. I mean, it never really stops, no matter where you are in the season. So I think I would stick with my original answer that at this moment in time, things are unlikely. A major thing is unlikely, I would say. And I think I know what you might be referring to, but in relation to any trade, things are always ongoing. And so if they weren't, I'm not sure what I would be doing because we lost in the first round, so we need to look at what we can do to make the team better. And that could be adding a bench player. That could be adding a couple free agents. That could be trying to, use our mid-level, trade for a player into our traded player exception. So, it's consuming. It's nonstop. It's every day. It's every night. It's too much. It's all the time. And so it never stops. I would never say in any situation, at least how I feel, that hey, I'm off the clock and I'm not working. If you're not doing anything, you're thinking about it. So everything's evolving. And honestly, in this climate and the pace of the way deals are made, things can happen and change like that. I mean, things can really get altered you can be talking about something and then 5 seconds later it's gone, and then 5 seconds later something new comes up. And that sounds like me deflecting a little bit, but that is the truth of things in all situations.
Bob, you said that we also have the luxury tax we have to be cognizant of, but not exactly 2014, 2015, more 2015, 2016. If I understood that correctly, why is that exactly?
Well, what we do is we model out potential contracts with current players. I think a lot of teams do that, so I think it's irresponsible if you just say, this is what the books say, without modeling out what you think your current players might cost to you. So I would say the threat of being a tax team looms larger because we're not really re-signing any of our own players this offseason. We might, but the signings would not take us into the tax. We have some players that we will look at that finish the roster with us, but I don't think we'll go over that $11, $12 million threshold. I don't think we will. But next year it's possible by re-signing some of our own players that we would. And next year I'm meaning like the summer of 2015. But things can change then too, and they will in some way, shape, or form. But all we do every day is model out different kind of scenarios where we're going to have this much money to spend or we'll be that much in the tax. And nothing is, because it's a lot of hypotheticals, you don't entirely know. But if you don't plan for it, then you wake up and you don't know, all of a sudden you're paying some big tax bill and your owner looks at you like, what are you doing? So you got to plan for things like that. Good? All right, guys, thanks.